I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfillment. We never stop learning. Those of you that have listened to the podcast for a while have heard me talk about the concept of having a growth mindset, of having a desire to being continually open to new insights, wisdom, and ways to enhance our professional and indeed personal capabilities. Now, it's very easy for that to manifest in our thoughts of, well, I need to enroll on another training course, or I need to listen to a particular podcast, or I need to read a book, or I need to engage a coach or a mentor. What I'm going to talk about today is one of those classic examples that lessons, insights, and inspirations are often all around us. And in this particular case, I'm going to talk about lessons from my own daughters. Now, any of you that are a parent will know there is a whole raft of challenges that you have to navigate. There's no rule book, there's no operational manual in terms of how to be an effective parent. But one of the things I'm very, very aware of is that you never stop learning as a parent, and your children are teaching you as much, if not more, in fact, than you are teaching them. And so today I wanted to extract 5 key traits that I see my daughters embody that each and every one of us would be wise to reflect on and embody in our own personal roles and professional roles. The first trait is empathy. I see it a lot in my daughters, that ability to just sense when somebody's not feeling quite right, whether that's one of their school friends in the playground, whether that's one of their cousins, whether that's somebody that they're just interacting with and playing with for the first time in a playground. They've got a very finely tuned sense of empathy and looking out for the needs of those around them. Empathy is something that I really worked on during my leadership tenure. I think I was probably guilty in the early stages of being a CEO of trying to have all the answers, trying to dive into every challenge, every problem, and bring the solution and tell everybody exactly what they needed to do. I thought that was powerful, positive, empowering leadership. And then over time, I learned, as we all do, that listening as much as we speak is very important, and truly listening, active listening, to be able to build that empathy with people. And sometimes people don't always want an answer or a solution there and then. They just want that arm around the shoulder. They just want that understanding that their challenges are seen and heard, and that their boss has got some empathy and some understanding for what they're going through. One of the powerful things I learned from this process is when you give people space, when they sense that you're truly empathetic, they often are able to work through the challenge themselves and present the solution and the action they need to take to resolve things. But they just need that space. They need that time to get to that point. And it's something, again, I see my daughters do very well. They don't jump in with solutions to every problem they see. They just show empathy. They just show kindness, and things seem to miraculously resolve themselves. As you regular listeners know, I repeatedly reiterate the need for reflection. That's what these episodes are all about. So as you're listening to me work through this point of empathy, think about, could I be a better listener? When do I sometimes need to show up and pause before jumping in with solutions and give my people the time to articulate what they would like to do, what solution they propose, and just show that I'm there for them. I recognize what the challenges are. And naturally, if they're floundering and they've got no idea what to do, then of course we're going to help them find the route forward. But just as a first step, listen before you speak. Trait number 2 is resilience. What's interesting and particularly challenging as a parent is you would love to clear the path for your children. The last thing you want to see is any sort of discomfort, pain, hardship, or hurt. coming their way. But with experience, you recognize that's impossible. It's impossible to protect them from that. And in fact, you're doing them a disservice because often it's those difficult moments that provide the greatest amount of learning and education that makes them stronger and more resilient in the future. And that's exactly the same for us as leaders. I would like to think that we care about our people and that you also would love to remove challenge and adversity from the door of your staff to make their work more fulfilling, more rewarding, and less stressful. But just as with the parenting analogy, that's almost impossible. And so allowing them to experience some of these challenges is essential in their growth. Because a little bit like the point I made about empathy and giving them space to find solutions, when we're challenged, when we face adversity, with the right guidance and support, we can often find a way through and a way to learn from it. So, a recent example for me was one of my daughters experienced disappointment in a sporting endeavor. And initially, it was very emotive for her. She wasn't particularly keen to continue that particular sporting pursuit, but very, very quickly, within a matter of days, she was reflecting, she was identifying where she could have done things differently and creating a plan for how she intends to improve for future competitions, which is exactly the route I would hope she would have taken. And again, as a dad, same analogy as a leader, the temptation is you have to jump in and say, no, you shouldn't feel like this. This is what you should be doing. But that wouldn't have been as impactful as allowing her to find her own way through and to create her own plan. So again, the temptation to jump in, just as we discussed with empathy, is very, very important with resilience, that your job as a leader is to help take out the emotion and extract the learnings with your team member on that challenging situation, and then listen and allow them to articulate what they feel they could have done better and what they feel they can change in the future as a consequence of that experience. So it's much more a facilitation role rather than that dictatorial, this didn't go right, I'll tell you what you did wrong, you should have done it like this, do it like this in the future, off you go. It doesn't really land with the same impact. And we want people to have more accountability and more ownership. That's how we build high performing teams. And one of the fundamental ways we're going to ensure that we do develop that accountability and ownership is allowing the individual to be part of creating the solution and the strategy moving forward, rather than just receiving a download of instructions from us as their leader. My closing point on resilience is just a reminder, really, that resilience can be developed. One of our most successful training programs and most popular programs at the Lonely Leader is our Creating Unshakable Resilience program. And we always start off by reminding people that the notion that resilience is innate, you've either got it or you haven't, you were born with it or you weren't, is completely deluded. And like everything in life, when you apply yourself, when you implement some habits consistently, then you can significantly enhance your resilience. And whether that's reflecting on developing the resilience in our children, in ourselves, or in our team, in our professional roles, there are a whole raft of ways to do that. And if you'd like to learn more about that, then please do reach out to us via all of our communication channels that are available in the show notes. We'd only be too happy to give you a deeper insight into that Creating Unshakable Resilience program. The third trait that I really admire in my daughters is curiosity. They are not afraid to ask the stupid questions. When something piques their interest, when it captures their attention, they want to learn about it. And they don't just accept face value answers. They dig deeper and they keep asking until they truly understand it. And that, in recent memory, has encompassed discussions around such things as the sinking of the Titanic, which really captured my daughter's attention, through to the dangers of social media and what exactly is trolling, and the sort of negative connotations on social media was something raised by my older daughter not too long ago. Roman history is something that has also captured the attention and led to wide-ranging discussions. The Second World War, you can see these historical elements are coming to the fore, and evacuation and air raids and what children experienced all those years ago in the same country in which my daughter had grown up. So it often hinges around something that's been introduced at school, something, as I say, in their history lessons, but it could be something on the news or something they've picked up within their social network. So, what's the leadership lesson? Well, don't always presume that people understand. And certainly don't be frustrated if people are asking what, in your opinion, might be somewhat simplistic or stupid questions. I would far rather that people in my team ask those questions and have absolutely no ambiguity on what is expected of them within their role, within their contribution to a wider strategy, than for them to sit silent for fear of embarrassing themselves or for fear of ridicule from me as their leader or from another team member, and as a consequence, make avoidable mistakes because they didn't really have clarity on what was expected. And equally, for you in your own role, whether you're in a leadership role or not, don't fear the scenario I've just said. You're better to have clarity and protect your ability to optimize your performance than avoid a little bit of initial embarrassment for asking the obvious question, only to then suffer the consequences of making a more serious mistake. And I guarantee that more often than not, you'll ask a question that other people in the room were thinking, and they'll be grateful that you've asked that question. And I think to wrap this point up, it's important that you foster curiosity in your team, that you encourage discussion, debate, that you encourage people to take a seed of an idea, develop it, interact, collaborate, because that's what a high performing environment entails. You don't just want an echo chamber where you suggest something, everybody nods agreement and blindly follows you over the edge of a hill. There needs to be an element where people take a good idea and make it an outstanding idea, and equally where they challenge perhaps a poor idea and prevent that actually manifesting into an actionable strategy or product, because the multitude of perspectives and different intellects and viewpoints in the team have actually brought to our attention that perhaps this isn't the idea, it isn't the thing to do right now. Perhaps it's something we can completely, or perhaps it's something we'll do in the future. So I think the whole notion of curiosity in a team is something that every leader should foster and actively encourage. The fourth trait is optimism. I once heard somebody give a presentation where they talked about the need for relentless optimism. I just thought that was a fabulous phrase. It's something that jumped out of the presentation. I've used it ever since, being relentlessly optimistic. And I see that regularly in my children. They see the best in everything. You know, when the weather takes a turn for the worst, they see the positive. Well, we can be cozy inside. We can put the fire on. We can have a hot chocolate and we can have a movie day and all curl up on the sofa and watch something. They don't turn and go, oh, the weather's terrible. That's ruined our plans for today. And those shoots of optimism permeate their entire mindset, how they tackle everything. Perhaps they haven't been ground down by the cynicism of the world, but I sincerely hope it's a trait that they retain and carry through with them into adulthood. And I think the leadership lesson in here is we need to try and retain that glass half full mentality as a leader. I'm not saying that we try and foster blind positivity and a delusion to face facts and to see the scale and the nature of the challenges we're facing. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is optimism is infectious, and so is negativity and pessimism. You're far more likely to find solutions and strategy and actionable steps when you encourage an air of optimism than you are when everybody's head down, pessimistic and fearful. And so I think that's what's key as a leader, that we bring the agenda back to, well, what can we control? Yes, this is challenging. Yes, we've articulated the problem. Yes, this is worse than we expected, or perhaps more challenging than we expected. But what can we do about it? Let's bring that curiosity to the table that we talked about in the previous trait. Let's step into things with an optimistic mindset, a belief that we can find a way. What steps can we take? I think that's really empowering as a leader. And the more people see you role modeling that as their leader, the more likely they are to carry that forward and ripple that through the wider organization. Tip number 5, authenticity. I would like to wager that at some point in your life, you have not been truly authentic to who you are based on the company you're in. It might have been a social situation, maybe it's a professional situation, but you dialed down a certain trait or you pulled back from your natural, authentic self. Maybe your humor was something that you didn't bring to the fore. Who knows? But we've all been there. We're all guilty of it as adults, that we're constantly reflecting and worrying about what other people think of us, and we're changing accordingly. Now, that might not be the case for you. And if it's not, more power to you and absolute credit to you that if you can move forward truly authentic in each and every situation you find yourself. But it's not the norm. However, it's far more common in children up to a certain age. And particularly with my younger daughter, she's in that age bracket where authenticity is the only way. And it's wonderful to see her and her friends interact. They're not worried about what other people think. They bring their authenticity to the school, to the classroom, to the playground, within the school, to the playground, socially, to after school clubs, to weekend clubs, to friendships, play dates, interacting with other family members, grandparents, cousins, aunties, you name it. They're just true to themselves. And it is very, very inspiring to see that, and a very timely reminder that actually we have to retain our authenticity, because that's what draws people together. People connect with people. They've got to know who you really are, what you stand for, what you believe in. And again, it's something that I learned early on in my CEO tenure. I stepped into it in my late 20s at a very young age, replacing somebody who was a wonderful man, but significantly older than me, with a totally different outlook, perspective, and leadership style. And initially, I think I was trying to ape that style. And it took me a while to think, this isn't really me. This isn't the authentic me. And I let the guard down and became much more of who I really was. I brought humor to my role at the right time and place. And that strengthened significantly the connections with my staff and what we were able to do as a team as a consequence. So I think practicing authenticity yourself is step number 1, absolutely critical. But also, as you're building and developing your team, give people the comfort, the confidence to be truly authentic. It ties back into something we've talked about in previous episodes: psychological safety. People need to be in an environment where they feel they can contribute and they can be authentic without fear of ridicule or criticism or any form of attack for bringing that authenticity to the table. Just a little health warning on this. I've had a couple of people try and utilize the banner of authenticity to shield or excuse poor behavior. It's not acceptable to be abusive or to lambast a colleague and say, well, I'm just being authentic. Yes, we've got to bring our authentic selves to the fore, but it's still got to be done in a respectful way. Going back to my point around psychological safety, I always caveat it doesn't mean when you have psychological safety that everybody gets on and agrees on every point. Far from it. There can be healthy debate, discussion, and disagreement when formulating strategy, reviewing performance, deciding on priorities moving forward. But it must always be done in a respectful way. Authenticity is not an excuse to disrespect. So I think there's an important nuance to that. But in reality, when it's handled right, when people are truly authentic, when the psychological safety is there for people to be who they really are, then the connection is so strong. People understand each other. They have a higher level of respect. And as I say, connectivity, which translates in significant jumps in productivity and overall individual and team performance. So I hope you found these insights useful. I think the overarching message of this episode is not every lesson is in a boardroom or a book. We've got lessons all around us. And I think our children can teach us so much. But even if you're not a parent, then that doesn't matter, because these lessons can still radiate into your day-to-day existence, in your professional role and your personal roles that you operate as a friend, as a sibling, as a son or a daughter. Being authentic, retaining our curiosity. These are all things that we win by bringing them to the fore, and everyone around us wins if we're more empathetic with each other. If we truly listen to each other before jumping in with solutions. All of these things have a benefit, and I hope that you are able to reflect and deliver and implement and be true to as many of them as you can within your day-to-day lives and professional roles. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.